Hi, and welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube and you want to learn more about what we do here, you can head over to officehours.global. And the way it works is our first hour is usually general questions around media and virtual production. And then our second hour is something that we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we are going to dive into the metaverse and what you need to know about the metaverse with Dr. Muhsinah Morris, Director of the Morehouse in the Metaverse at Morehouse College. And today's an extra special day because in after hours at 10 a.m., we'll be having a watch party for Blackmagic design. So again, you want to head over to officehours.global so that you can get the all access pass to be able to join us at that time. And for the rest of the schedule for the week, you can find it at officehours.global. Let's get started. Go ahead, Bill.
Our first question this morning comes from Andy Carluccio in Washington, D.C., and Andy says, I need to buy a router and Wi-Fi solution for my new home as my fiber provider is not offering equipment. I do enough Dante and NDI that I'm concerned about Ubiquiti, but I don't want to wade into enterprise hardware. What should I buy?
Jason.
I've got to say Ubiquiti for the Switch. I have had zero problems with Dante. As long as you just tag your traffic, you're good.
And Alex?
Yeah, for home, I think Ubiquiti is pretty good. I mean, when it comes to enterprise, we use a lot of Meraki stuff, but the Ubiquiti is pretty good. What I would not do is do a mesh network. Just trust me, don't do mesh. So I'm about to rip out a lot of my stuff and put in Ubiquiti actually into my house, but I'm going to have separate APs for everything. I'm not going to do the mesh that I did before because it's been a disaster.
Let's see what Grant has to say.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the Dream Machine Pro router and the Pro Switch that works great. All Ubiquiti, and I haven't done any settings for Dante, and I was just going to say that I'm using Dante now, and I was being tricky by turning off my mic to show that Dante is working perfectly fine over this network. It is working perfectly fine. I've done a little bit of NDI; it's worked fine as well. But having said that, I've found a couple of guys on YouTube as well that go through all the settings for Dante and NDI, so that you can really dial it in. But I haven't needed to, and I've just done 10 gig on my on the Mac Studio, and that's working nicely as well. So I'm happy.
And Eric, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. First time on the panel.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to be here. So I was going to suggest Netgate for a router. I use Ubiquiti at home as well for Wi-Fi, but I find that Netgate is actually a really good value for home users as well as corporate users. And it actually runs a software called pfSense, which they have kind of developed and also provide really good support for people who are maybe not quite as sophisticated with it. And pfSense is incredibly powerful and allows you to do a lot of the things that you can do with some of the upper end routers.
All right, Jeffrey.
And it's important to understand it's not about the router, it's about the switch and how you have your infrastructure on your switches. Because routers, all routers are doing is they're making sure that devices have IP addresses. A switch, if you move switches around, especially if you go up switch to a switch into a switch, you are routing in a very odd way. So you want to make sure that you have a base where it has a switch that has more than enough data throughput on each of the channels, and then wires going to the areas that you want your Dante or your NDI to live, and not split the switch into a computer and a camera or anything like that. So it can use the full pipe going right back down to the main switch, which would then come through. So, and then have your router in that main switch that's doing all the extra stuff. And of course, Wi-Fi, I always say if you have to do Wi-Fi, go Wi-Fi 6 and do not do Wi-Fi 5.
And Alex.
Does anyone know the difference between there's the Dream Machine Pro and then the Pro with enterprise management device, and one's $379 and the other one's $549. Do we know what the difference is? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the difference is that one supplies PoE, and I think it has 10 gigabit throughput on the SFP ports.
Got it. Okay.
Next question.
Next one again comes to us from Andy Carluccio in Washington, D.C. What did we learn from the Google Earth experiments for Office Hours 2.0 last night in After Hours?
Alex.
I got the second part of it. I was in something else and I got this ping from Andy. It's like, one of those things like, there's a conversation going on after hours about Google Earth. It looks really cool. And I think I need to have someone who was probably sitting in it a little bit more to talk about it, but it's really using people's, location to be able to build a graphic for our show that will kind of zoom in.
Eric?
Yeah, I was there till wee hours of the morning. It's really fascinating. I think we've actually got it down to a smooth transition between questions. So it looks to me like we can kind of, we can zoom in and then it will back out. And then what we're trying to do is adjust the speed at which it transitions from one location to another. So we were thinking like, well, if we were going from, Florida to Manila, as from one question to another, we don't want the speed to kind of slowly inch its way around the earth, right? We want it to go a lot quicker than if you were going from Florida to Washington, D.C. And so I think that's actually been dialed in now, as far as I can tell.
Interesting. Jeffrey?
Yeah, and I was there for the first part, and we were just testing it, making sure that we could go to all 7 continents. We were actually taking the Google Earth to different places, like where the Titanic sits and 0.0. And we were, I did a search on, I put the location in as McDonald's to see how many McDonald's we could pull up and things like that, see if we could break the system. So, and I know that we wanted to try it. We had the Google Earth, but we wanted to try it. I can't remember the name of the flat one, where they flatten out the Earth, the metallurgical. Anyway, the whole point is that we were looking for a way to do it that way. But I'm glad that the second half got really intense, and glad we got some things solved there.
How long were you all on for? Oh, sorry.
I think it was a long time.
Yeah, I was on till 10.
An hour. Yeah, it was a couple hours, I think. So I didn't see the whole thing.
Okay.
I think the map makers are screaming Mercator projection too.
Okay, someone said 1 a.m. Eastern. Thank you, Brandon. Next question.
Next one comes from Joaquin Mattis in Imperial Valley, California. Excuse me. Week 1 of Coachella was this past weekend with its 3 concurrent live streams of the sets. For those of you that have experience streaming events at this scale, what have you learned? How does your approach change based on the size of that event?
Alex?
Yeah, I've actually worked at Coachella, and some larger events. I mean, I think that one of the things that you get into is that you have to be a little bit practical about it. It's not going to be as good as shooting in a little studio. So you guys have seen me kind of work through a stage that we've been doing tests on. It's because I don't like actually doing things on site, because it's just kind of 90% of it is logistics. It's not art. It's just getting the cameras into place, making sure that you get signal and making sure that the sync is on. The funny thing about Coachella is you get to listen for at least a half a day, if not the whole day. A tick, 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 tock, tick, 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 tock, tick, 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 tock. See, I did it a couple times. It drives you crazy. Imagine listening to that all day. They're syncing all the cameras. And so they're trying to make sure that the audio, because in music, of course, audio sync is important. And so they have this little iPad app or iPhone app that they just go out there and they put out there and are constantly trying to make sure that everything's in sync. You're again in Coachella specifically, you're dealing with dust, you're dealing with heat, you're dealing with sun, you're dealing with, there's a lot of bits and pieces of it that are there. So, usually the footage is pretty good, but not incredible. The angles that the cameras get are limited because there's so many people in the way. And so there's, there's a lot of things about it. So when you get into those really big ones, it's more of coverage than really creating something, and so that's, in my opinion, there's a lot of stages there and they're doing the best they can. They've got a lot of money to do it, but they still, it's just a lot of logistics. The other thing is that when you think about the thing you don't think about until you're there is how long it takes for all the clearance. So clearing all those bands for all those songs and all the copyright holders takes almost a year. like literally, like when it's not like they called in the week. People are like, well, they just do it in Coachella. I'm like, yeah, they have a team that started 9 months ago, figuring out what they're going to play. And you can't, like, bands that go off the rails and start playing something other than what they were told to play or show up and play. There's a lot of kerfuffle. that goes on, with those. And so, and usually on this, if an artist shows up out of the blue to play some stuff, it's usually not on one of the stages that's being streamed, because it's important, because they can't, they have to really stick to what they said they were going to do. So, but it's fun to some degree, but it's sunny and really dusty, and there's a lot of people. All my favorite things.
Yeah, +1 on all of that. I've got a friend, so I haven't personally, but I have a friend who's done Coachella for a few years on the stage management side, and it is like that ramp up is insane. And what that was a couple of weeks ago with just documentation, the second hour on that, like just imagine like what their production Bible looks like. It's intense. Alex.
One of the cool things, though, is some of the folks covering it have the coolest buses. They have this one, I can't remember who had it, but they had it right behind the production trucks that I was in. They have a bus that opens up the whole top. So the entire top of it. And I think I don't know where else they use it. I've never seen it anywhere else. But it opens up and there's like a little bar up there, and there's like tables, and that's where they shoot some of the outdoor stuff, for it. But it's all the coverage. It's like a studio in a truck, and it's pretty cool. And I think they use it at like Burning Man and Coachella and a couple of the festivals. But it's you see a lot of really creative ways of making that happen.
Chris?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same one, but I know that Will Smith was famous for using a bus like that. That was his.
It could have been Will Smith. I didn't know who it was. I just saw it and just was like, I need one of those.
Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana has this one. Anker tablet stand, and then he's got a link there. Was looking at this for the live app and mix effect. Any thoughts?
Grant?
Yeah, so I don't do a lot of impulse buying, right? But I was standing at a computer shop this one day, and I came across this hoverbar duo, which Apple stores have this as well. It's about $80 US, and I am totally sold. My iPad Pro is basically living in this now. It's awesome in bed. It's awesome in the kitchen. Wherever you put it, it stays there, and you can spin it around. You can rotate it. The cool thing is too that you can also put it. You can put a phone in there, and so yeah, I'm a total convert to it. I use it all the time now. You can see how wherever you place it is where it stays. I love it, so I can't recommend that more.
Am I the only one drooling at that, Bill?
Yeah, it's cool.
I actually have the Anker stand. I use it for a very specific purpose, and I will tell you its plus and its minus. First of all, it's beautifully designed and it's nice. What I needed it for was in the voice booth, I needed a second monitor, and I didn't really have any desk space to put it because there's very little room in a voice booth. So I drilled through the back wing of that and mounted it to the door, and my desire was to take a low-weight LCD panel and then be able to put it there. And the negative of it is that it clicks into positions as opposed to having a continuous adjustment. So in the flat against the wall, my monitor was falling off. When I tried to pull it out just enough to make sure that was stable while I was doing my workout there, it was not clicking, and it had to come out farther. And when it came out farther, if I forgot about that, that would catch my shirt on the way out. So it's one of those things where if you just need a specific use and you don't have to adjust it in fine increments, it's fine. To me, that not having some kind of screw down, position it at exactly the angle you need for your use so it doesn't bother you, was missing. And so I would look at Grant's suggestion, I think, before I would look at the Anker things. It's really pretty, but it's not completely adjustable.
Jason?
I use a scissor mic arm that I just adapted to fit the iPad, and it works beautifully. Just, an old studio scissor mic arm, and goes everywhere I need.
And Alex?
And you got the one with the stand, is that right? There's another one that has the high rise. Do you know which one do you have, Grant? Is that the one? Is it with stand, I guess?
Yeah, it's with the stand, but that it actually is. You can pull the base off, and it comes with it in the box. It has another.
There's like it has like compass, and then high rise and stand, and they all seem to be different.
I think so. This little attachment here, that goes around a beam, or no, You can clip it on
Shelf.
a desk. Yeah, shelf. That's it. Shelf. It's such a hard, complicated word. Yeah, that clips onto the shelf. That comes with it, and as well as the base. So what you see there all comes with it.
Okay, because it has like other things in there. I guess in Amazon, not that I'm about to buy it or anything. I'm not going to buy it. I have some to sell. Oh, maybe I might buy it.
Yeah, it just looks so handy. Like really so many different use cases. Jeffrey.
So I think the one that Chris is showing and the one that Grant's showing are two different types of things. What Chris is showing is something that's also has a dock attached to it, which is great because then if you're just basically putting it as a docking station, you can set the iPad down, plug it in, and then you can use all the ports on the bottom there. And then I'm not sure, Grant is the one that you're using that also have a multi-dock into it, or?
No. So
yeah, it doesn't
no dock at all. No.
Yeah.
No,
the biggest problem I have with all of them is my iPad always has a case around it, and I have yet to see somebody make a stand or anything like that will actually accept a case. And so a lot of times my cases will come with kickstands and things like that and use it that way.
Bill?
Here's another option that's very heavy duty. This is about $70. It's from Small Tree, and I'm surprised at how well engineered it is. That swivel base that clamps to your desk has a whole bunch of nylon bushings inside, so it is absolutely quiet, swings around well. It's not perfectly adjustable, but if you're looking for something that is so solid that you can actually use the pad and write on it or tap on it and it's not going to move around, this is another good option. Small Tree.
Mine shows up later today.
Thank you all. Next question.
Next question. Douglas Carmichael, I've been thinking about learning AWS, Amazon Web Services, as it's been a component of what we do, but have been always concerned about overspending. Would there be any safe sandbox learning curriculum that could guard against me running up a big bill?
Alex.
You gotta be more controlled than I am. I forget to turn it off all the time. The main thing is setting up some kind of pattern that has it that turns it on and off. And I'm still working on that. So I will admit that I burned up a little bit of money. But usually I'm burning up a buck here and a buck there. I'm not turning on big instances. I know when we had big instances on, we had alarms and multiple people that had to know about it because it was costing us, a couple $100 a day to have them on. So, but when I'm streaming, I have, it's $1.50 here and there, and it's still frustrating when I forget, but it's not as bad.
Grant?
Yeah, I just recommend that you really study the free tier. There's a lot of their products. Some are completely free always, up to a certain amount. And then some have a certain number of hours that you can use. And then some are just 12 months. And so the other suggestion when you study that is that take the 12 months and really use that well. What I found is that I used only a couple of services for the first year. And then when it came to me wanting to play with these other things, I was out of my 12-month of the free tier. And so it's actually worth kind of investing that time in that first year and playing around with a whole bunch of the different services and just getting an idea, and you can do all that for free. And then the other tip is that I never really got my head around the billing alerts, but they're really awesome. And so now that I'm 10 years into it or more, I'm finally got billing alerts going, and that's really worth playing into. They don't enable those by default, so for obvious reasons.
So you've got to go in on the back end and set those up, correct?
You sure do, yep.
Okay, great advice. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. He says, where does the bandwidth come from when you broadcast Zoom to YouTube and or Facebook from the client acting as host, or does it broadcast from Zoom's server? I would have sworn client side, but the bandwidth usage seems low.
Grant.
Yeah, thankfully, it does it from their servers. So I guess thankfully, not thankfully, as in it's 720p is the maximum that it outputs when it goes to YouTube. And so if it was running off your local machine and you had a 1080 account, then arguably you'd be able to output at 1080. But it's amazing what they're they're doing on the server now. I do lots of these little meetings that I just need to do a quick edit, and having that cloud recording, you kind of get an insight into what's going on those servers, where they have a separate gallery view that's, or you can turn it all on and have gallery view and separate active speaker and separate screen share. And now they've just enabled, a little while ago, they enabled ISO recording of audio. And so now when I do these cloud recordings and I've got it turned on, I did an hour recording the other day, and I'm like, why have I got 15 gig or something of recording there, and most of it is audio, because there was 40 different people that spoke during this meeting, and each one of them now is like a 400 megabyte WAV file for the entire meeting is a WAV file and just a little bit of waveform there when they spoke for 12 seconds. But it's amazing. I've already been able to use it on a couple of shows where I just quickly grabbed that down and was able to fix when someone coughed or whatever, and it worked really, really well. So anyway, my point is it's done on the server, and the servers are doing some pretty sweet stuff.
Awesome. Next question.
Aaron Gencarelli from Flagstaff, Arizona says his iPad stopped receiving text messages from everybody but a few select numbers. What could be causing iPad to not receive texts?
Jason.
My guess is that it got disconnected in any number of ways. But if you go into messages on your main iOS device, on your iPhone, like your specific iPhone, you go into settings and then messages, go to text message forwarding. That'll show you every iOS device that is connected to your iOS account. And the way that it does SMS relay is a little weird. Check that in there and make sure that the iPad that you have is first up to date. And then second, you've got that switch clicked on, and it should fix it.
Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say on an iPad, the question is it a text message or is it an iMessage? And you want to make sure that you're signed in to your iMessage account. And those two are different, right? Green bubble, blue bubble. So if it's green bubble, then definitely follow that. Make sure you have send as SMS turned on your iPhone. But if it's blue bubble, you probably want to check to make sure that you're actually logged into your iCloud account.
Good call. Next question.
Carlos Ranconi in Rio de Janeiro says, hello, I'm in a search for a very affordable wireless intercom system, at least 16 people. Any suggestions? Courtney?
Well, the combination of those words, very affordable, and intercom system for 16 people are incongruous. There are great intercom systems. You could use Unity, of course, as long as everyone has a cell phone and you have good cell phone service or good Wi-Fi in the area. Another possibility you might think of, and this is what we used to use on sets all the time before there was Unity, is these FRS radios. They're unlicensed. This is a Midland set, and it's about $69 for a pair of them, and they come with the headset and boom microphone plug-in so that they can operate silencing, and they have about 50 channels. Now, it's not going to manage your comms like a Unity server will, but with the 50 channels and privacy filters, which there are certain filters that you can put on to separate your radio traffic from anybody else who happens to be on the same frequency. And they're good for about up to a mile or mile and a half, depending upon whether your line of sight or going through walls. And so that's about the most affordable comm system you can end up with without going to one of the big boys.
And Alex?
Yeah, the Unity is one that we've used in the past. Also, I know that Noah, in our Noah Sargent, has the Hollyland, which are not incredibly cheap, but the least expensive ones. They look solidly built, and I think that was pretty effectively used for the space launch.
And Grant?
Yeah, so I just put another vote in for Unity. And I would encourage you, one of the things you're saying there is very affordable, and you've got at least 16 people. And I would just caution you that your event will rise and fall on the quality of your communication system. It's as simple as that. And so what it sounds like is you've got all these other priorities and you're coming down to comms. Okay, now we need to talk, and now we're using up the scraps of our budget to get people talking to each other. I'd encourage you to try to flip that and that you put a lot more money in, and you may save money in some other areas that aren't as important as talking to your people. And so Unity works great, but as Courtney said, it really, you do need to have good quality internet, and then you'll be fine. But of course, also the other thing I just mentioned, with a large group of people like that, inevitably you want to do point to point. You want to be able to talk to people directly. You don't want to be using up maybe the one or two party lines that you have. You want to be able to talk to people directly, and of course Unity makes that really easy.
Alex?
On my first job that I needed this kind of thing, I got some wired telex, some wired things that I rented for $1,200 for the show. And then I thought I could do this with wireless, and I didn't understand that I couldn't get from the North Hall to the South Hall on Moscone. In Moscone, this is probably 15 years ago. And so we ended up on cell phones the whole day, which was painful. And then I got Clearcom. And so it was, and started figuring this stuff out. And so the main, what I was going to underline for what Grant said was, comms are half the show, half the show. I would take less quality cameras and lenses before I gave up my comms, because it's just, there's nothing, especially, when something goes wrong, comms save the day every single time, because you're not running around and trying to figure out what to do. You're all talking back and forth. We've had people fall apart on a show. I mean, their connection falls apart. We tell the host, don't go to that person. We tell that person, we're going to restart you. We bring them all back in. We tell the host, now you can talk to them again. And all those kinds of things all happen in the background quietly. It's really a big deal.
Yeah, it's planning for the inevitable and being able to have that prepared. Next question.
Eric Price in Kansas City is up next. He says, while testing a webinar for my house of worship, we had an issue where the link would open the Zoom app but not load the meeting. Problem turned out to be Firefox running on a PC. On Chrome, the LINKKEY app worked normally. Anyone know why this happened?
Jason.
Yeah, Firefox has turned up their security settings such that allowing Firefox to open an external app is something you have to explicitly allow per domain name.
Alex.
I didn't take my hand down fast enough. What he said.
Oh, okay. Grant.
Yeah, there's a deep link going on as well, right? And so it's possible that it was launching the Zoom link, but not passing through the deep link, which actually says, and then this meeting ID and password. And so, it's linked to what they were talking about with Firefox closing down on security. But I use Chrome all the time, and it works great.
Next question.
Jonas Datel, Stuttgart, Germany. Any predictions for tonight? Maybe he's talking about the Blackmagic thing or something.
This morning for us, but tonight for Jonas. And I think that it'd be interesting to see what people think. I think it might have something to do with Resolve. I think that they're going to talk about Resolve. They might talk about it in the cloud, given that was the title of the thing. I think that's a safe prediction. I think the question is whether they're going to announce anything else. A lot of us are hoping that they'll announce hardware, specifically cameras. So we're hoping to see cameras here that might work well with Resolve. But there's kind of this big open. There's a couple big open marks, and maybe they're going to leave it just to Resolve. I have a hard time thinking that they can talk about Resolve in the cloud for an hour, but maybe they can. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour maybe, but it seems like there's other space for other things. We would love to see some switchers between the Extreme and the Constellation upgraded, because everything's kind of long in the tooth in between those two. And so those switchers are there. We have an 8K switcher, we have an 8K recorder, but no 8K camera. So it seems like somewhere in there could be a camera that is going to supply that we think might happen before NAB, or a lot of us, I think maybe hope is what we call thinking. So anyway, I think those are some of the things that we're thinking about.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm happy you broke that down, because I was like, so from a hardware perspective, what are some of the things that you were thinking might happen?
Yeah.
Jason?
I would love to see a little bit more added to the remote device, the remote boxes. I have one, and I always forget its name, but you can broadcast specifically to an IP address. The thing, what's it called, Alex?
The bridge.
Thank you. The remote bridge. I would love to see something like comms added to that. That would be amazing.
And Bill.
And I'm not sure, but I'm always hoping for cameras in smaller form factors. The Blackmagic cinema stuff is fabulous, but it is not really a super portable format anymore. When I carry around my cage and my Blackmagic 6K rig, it doesn't feel at all like a camcorder anymore, and you really do have to add up your jibs and everything else you mount it to, tripods and the rest of that, to make it a system where on the other side of the world, everything is getting smaller, and phones, even at their incredibly light print, are getting better and better. Now, there are two different systems for two different kinds of things. I understand that, but I'm still surprised. So I would hope that they almost do something in the micro camera space, because that's where the industry seems to be headed.
That would be really interesting. I was watching a YouTube video the other day of just vlogging, and can you vlog with, a Blackmagic, just because of the size. So your point about form factor would be very interesting to see if something like that takes place. Next question.
David Brady is up next from New York City. He says, that Sunday place of mine is thinking of a website redesign, looking for a platform that might help in combining video, print, and email management all in one place. Is there such a thing? We still do old-fashioned mailers, believe it or not.
Alex?
I think that was web, print, and email management. I will say that what we have is, of course, when we have Ken. So Ken builds our website. We do use MailChimp some of the time for email when I'm not occasional. I don't send it out to everyone that checks in from the website there. But MailChimp's pretty effective, and I barely use it, but you'll see us using it a lot more as we kind of transition away from using the daily reminders from Zoom. And so anyway, so I think that's something to think about. I have to build, if I don't have someone like Ken to work on something, I build everything in Squarespace, because I can edit it and I can hand it off to somebody else to edit it. And they don't have to know anything about the web to do it. And so it's somewhat limited in what it lays out, but it's relatively clean, and it's dynamic. It'll change for mobile and web. And again, I will only do a real website if I have a real person to work on it. But otherwise, if you don't have someone that's going to be dedicated to it that you can afford, and that means they're either volunteering or you have the money to pay for them, or then just do something that don't try to learn how to do web to do one website.
Grant?
Yeah, there's a company that used to be called Infusionsoft. It's now called Keep, KEAP, and it's a CRM, a customer relationship manager, which will do everything that you're talking about. So, ultimately it's about managing the different attributes of all the different people, and lots of tagging and things as you send emails out and things like that. But the cool thing is that it integrates with a whole bunch of different services. One of those I found was a company called Postalytics, which does mail outs, and you can just tie those two together, and then once they're talking together, now you can send out essentially emails, but printed however you want them. They can be postcards or letters and things that can be sent out, and they can all be automated. So once you get a good system like that works with lots of different systems like Zapier and services like that, now it's not just this closed system, but it's open to all these other services that you can connect. And once you get the automation bug, it's hard to get rid of that. You just keep adding on new services and tie them all together
to save time. And John?
There is a church-specific one. Planning.center is a website that incorporates web, people management, volunteer management. It's definitely one of those things where you can buy a little and you're going to keep just adding on platforms to it. Very powerful to use. And with their new web and app mobile management stuff, it's pretty cool.
What was the name again, John?
That's Planning Center. The website's planning.center.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll post a link in Makana.
Next question.
Next one comes from John Nichols in Concord, California. The Blackmagic Pocket Camera 4K connected to an ATEM Extreme going through two HDMI-SDI bidirectional converters. The remote camera controls aren't working. Is there a way to make this work? And he has the chain as camera, goes into the HDMI cable, goes into an HDMI-SDI converter, goes into an SDI cable, into an SDI HDMI converter, into an HDMI cable, and then finally into the ATEM Extreme.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the reason that this does not work is because you're going back to HDMI into the I don't think that it'll pass that both directions. I think that the way that this converter is generally designed to be used is to connect either an HDMI to the SDI camera or the SDI to an HDMI switcher. But I think that going back and forth through both may not communicate correctly. I could be wrong, but that seems like I don't know if we've ever done that before. We have a lot of those bidirectionals, but we're using them to connect 6Ks to a constellation. So the other thing is to absolutely make sure. The other thing you'll have to, when you're doing this, you have to make sure you number all the cameras in the box, so they can't. You have to actually, you're defining the number of the camera to the switcher in the box, which you will need to do on both boxes. And I imagine they both have to switch. But I think that I think going in and out of that could be complex.
Jason?
I've never been able to use more than one bidirectional converter. And also, this is another gotcha. The first generation of bidirectional converters do not pass camera control. Again, they do not pass camera control. The second generation and forward do.
Okay. Sorry, I was just following that. I was like, oh, that's neat. That's why our panel is so awesome. Next question.
Dick Brewer in Guatemala says, Final Cut Pro introduced recently some new features. Last week, they introduced voice isolation options by adjusting the level of the background noise using machine learning. Has anybody experimented with it? And if so, what comments might you have?
Alex.
I haven't experimented with it, but I am going to say that if based on my weekend, this last weekend, I would wait for a 0.1 release of the update. There's I'm having critical issues. so the I can't render something. So it's I would be careful of upgrading and playing with it right now.
Bill?
I've been on it for about a week, but the thing is I haven't used voice isolation for anything because I have a voice booth, so I don't really need to kill any noise. But I have not heard on the parts of the web that I hang out in for Final Cut editors much talk about it yet. So I think it's just early in its life. Alex may have a good point. There may be bugs that they still have to quash. In new releases, they do find small ones and they have to track them down. They usually do that pretty quickly, but that's an issue.
Yeah.
Next question.
Albie Lopez in San Antonio, Texas. What's the best wireless presenter clicker for presenters that reliably works on the Macintosh?
Jason.
Macintosh, PC, doesn't matter. The DSAN Perfect Q, straight up. And
Alex.
This is it. Now the hardest part of this right now is that it's really hard to find them right now. They're having a chip shortage issue, so they're hard to find. There is no close second. I have used, I don't know how many clickers. I've had clickers handed to me. This is the very smallest version. This one fits in my backpack. They make bigger versions that are sit on the table. They make this is the tiny version. There's a medium version that has a little piece, and then there's a big triangle that you can get. But it's made by DSAN. If you even look at the Apple one where they had to run the queue to Tim Cook, it was this one. So this is what we refer to as the pickle. And this pickle is this is what's used everywhere for every major keynote that you ever see if someone's actually advancing the slides.
Grant?
Yeah, I was just going to add a vote to the Perfect Q, and the reason that it works so well across all the different, or one of the reasons, is that it's essentially a keyboard emulator, and you can set the settings in it to do whatever keystroke you want it to do. So often it's like a right arrow and left arrow, but it can be page down, but it could also be completely different, a different combination of shortcut, and so now you could use it for all sorts of different things. But that's the reason that it works so well. It's not some of its own software. It doesn't need any software. It just sees it like a keyboard.
Next question.
Next question comes from Kenneth Jones in Seattle, Washington. Without being specific to your own case, don't tell us your secrets. What physical security could a small business adopt to better protect their real and their intellectual property?
Jason?
I'll take just a quick whack at this. You need a password manager. Let it generate your passwords. And you need two-factor authentication. It's not optional.
But physical security.
Physical security, door locks, I don't know.
Courtney?
Yeah, be careful about door locks. I had some theft when the building was being sold where my equipment was stored, and bringing in people to look at the building or inspect the building. And they were leaving, they would go through the building and then clandestinely open window locks. And they're inspecting the basement. Keep your if you have an alarm system, make sure the alarm system is in a locked room so that no one has access to it to get in and disconnect the phone lines that go to the monitoring system. Because they did that. They went in there and unlocked those, and unfortunately the room where the alarm system was stored was not alarmed. So make sure that there's a tamper switch on your alarm system. As far as protecting intellectual property, dongles are good. They make something like this from a key lock. You can buy these and integrate your software with these digital dongles. They can be moved from computer to computer. They're very difficult to break. Not that they are completely foolproof against high-end hackers, but this will give you a level of protection that's much higher than most built-in protection that you can incorporate in your intellectual property. For if you have high-end programs that you're selling for multi-thousands of dollars, you want to be able to protect them so that they can't just copy them willy-nilly and distribute them on the internet.
Bill?
I'll say that in terms of physical stuff, I think it's getting better. And I say that because I was just reading a long thread on the web about those little air trackers. I can't remember what they're called, air tags. And the fact that people are having all sorts of trouble because people are selling them or selling phones or things like that. And they can't get your ID from that out successfully. And people are having trouble because once your air tag is connected into the phone system, it is so persistent that unless you detach them before you sell devices, no one can use any of that technology on the phone. So I think that's getting better out there for intellectual property holders. The other thing I'd just like to mention, and this decades ago, I thought to myself, I've got all these great ideas. How can I monetize them? I kind of came to the understanding that ideas by themselves have very little value, even the greatest idea. If I had the idea, if I was a biochemist, which I'm not, and had the idea of how to cure a disease, in my head, that has no value. Ideas only have value in their implementation. And that's why the protections, patents, copyrights, and things like that are to protect that implementation. The idea itself has to go out in the world and generate financial returns of some kind. So you have to have, in the case of a magical medicine, you got to have people to create it and market it and distribute it and get it into people's arms and all the rest of that. Mm-hmm. That's where the value lives, in the supply chain and into the marketing of things, not the original idea. And it's just, so I stopped chasing that dream of finding the idea that was going to make me rich.
Eric, real quick.
Yeah, I was just going to say Meraki has a camera system that is really, really strong. And each of the cameras actually have onboard storage, so you don't have to have a network video recorder. And so if one is stolen, you can also back it up to the cloud. There's actually a lot of really interesting things you can do with Meraki. And now they're introducing sensors into that as well. So you can have some motion sensors or other kinds of sensors along with your Meraki product.
Alex?
You can't usually stop people, but you can slow them down. So the key is you want an alarm that's going to go to an actual security system that someone's going to actually come and check out what's going on in a couple minutes. Then you need things like bars and so on and so forth to basically slow the person down. And then you want cameras. And those cameras can be internal, but you definitely want, when we go to venues, we have cameras that are on batteries that are connected to MiFis that are kind of hidden away, and the cameras look at each other as well as to the outside world. And so it's very hard to get anywhere near our space without us seeing you on our, in this case, a Nest. And so we have like 5 or 6 of them there. And so we've seen all kinds of interesting things with those cameras.
And Courtney?
Yeah, a couple of things I forgot to mention too that affected when I lost some equipment is, don't think if you've got stuff padlocked, that's going to protect you, or even with a good secure in the wall, in the door lock and steel doors, because there's a thing called bump keys, and bump keys can be bought on the internet for any type of lock. You just put them in, you tap them, and you can turn and you can unlock most cylinder type locks. So I find the best solution against using bump keys. They're very expensive locks that have measures inside them to prevent the use of a bump key. But use combination locks. Combination locks that do not have a key to unlock them are a safeguard against bump key usage. And so if you think you're safe with a good lock, you may not be at all. And the other thing to mention is if they use a bump key and get in, your insurance company may not cover the loss, because if there's no sign of forced entry, a lot of insurance policies have clauses in them that says there has to be a sign of forced entry, otherwise they won't cover any missing equipment. And a bump key leaves no sign of forced entry, so keep that in mind.
That was really good. It sounds like a possible second hour, just going deeper into the world of security and protecting your IP. Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia says, assuming there will be no new Blackmagic design cameras in around 2 hours, would panelists go for the Blackmagic Studio 4K Pro or small live stream Zoom meeting rooms, or 4 small live stream Zoom meeting rooms, or would you use another option, connecting to ATEM Mini or Mini Extreme perhaps?
John?
If you are using an SDI workflow, those cameras are great. The one thing to take into consideration is the lenses. The MFT lenses, there's not a lot of great options that are out there. And control is going to mostly be manual. So if you're looking for something you can remotely manage, it gets really complicated. The 6K Pros are great. They use the Super 35 sensor, and there's tons of lenses, tons of flexibility.
Alex?
The 6Ks are dramatically better than the 4Ks, in my opinion, after using both of them. That's why I have a whole slew of 6Ks and only one 4K. And the reason is the light sensitivity is way better, and it's way easier to get better lenses. Those are the big things. They control the same way, but they're not the same. And I would, if you can at all afford to get a 6K, I'd rather have a used 6K than a new 4K.
Next question.
Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Ehrenalm, Germany says, what does the Obvio service, and he's got the link there, do that other event platforms like Hoppin cannot?
Grant?
It's a bit of a softball for Grant today.
I think he saw you that you were there, and so it's like, let's ask Grant some questions.
Well, for people that don't know, Obvio is a love child of office hours. It was from when Blue Melnick came on 2 years ago now, and spoke about how he was doing a Zoom meeting with 1,000 people, at 1,200 people. It was, and we were all blown away. We're like, whoa, how are you doing that? And it was like, using multiple Zoom meetings and things like that. And we connected through that, and then we're now into version 4 of Obvio, which is a platform for hosting virtual events. It includes Zoom and enterprise licensing. I don't want to do a big pitch. I'm just trying to answer the question. It includes the enterprise license of Zoom, which means that you've got HD and 1,000 people, large meetings, and unlimited cloud recording, things like that. The essence of what Obvio is a dashboard system for handling your attendees for before the event, during the event, and after the event. And so it enables them to get into Zoom, and then you can control their name when they're in there and put emojis on their names and things like that. So people probably don't know also that all of the Tony Robbins events are all ran on Obvio. So we know that it works with 30,000 people and things like that. So it load balances across multiple Zoom meetings and things. It was a good time to ask because next week, Blue and Barry are doing a conference. They run their own little conference, 3-day conference called the Virtual Event on Virtual Events. And so it's a conference talking about virtual events. And one of those sessions is all about Obvio and a couple of new features that we're announcing, which is basically being able to sell tickets as well as send out comms and things like that, emails and all that through the platform. So a couple of things. I'll post a link if you're interested in the virtual event on virtual events. I highly encourage you to check it out because it's they really know their stuff when it comes to digital first events. So, okay, my pitch is over.
We'll look out for the link. Next question.
Well, you thought it was over. We have a follow-up from Fred Eric Eckert, and he says, how does Obvio handle the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, and the General Data Production Regulation, the GDPR?
Yeah, it's a great... Sorry, that's a great question. Currently, the way that we navigate through that is that we store very little of the data around for people, and so there is first name and last name and email is really all we need to have. So that doesn't mean that we're covered totally. Another thing that we have is part of all of our attendees that come through. We have a waiver before they can get into the dashboard, and that's a customized waiver. And so we often use that. We have our lawyers that go over all these, terms and conditions, and they're signing away that essentially their rights to some of those things, and they're acknowledging where the data is going and who has access to it and things like that. It's very specific when you get down into that into those details around those regulations. But the waiver works really well because we can do a likeness release as well, and so now we can use images and things like that as well. And so it's great, and it's a little signature that they have to sign or with their finger or whatever. And so there's a couple of things that we've got that we're ticking those boxes at the moment.
Next question.
The next one comes to us from John Wallace in Pontiac, Michigan here on the panel. Does the Blackmagic Video Assist pass control signal through it for ATEM control of the camera?
Jason?
Yes.
Thank you. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next with how are keyboards and or synthesizers handled in most live broadcast events these days? Is it mostly a stereo submix or separate channels for each synth?
Jason?
It's both. Put stereos in and then use a DCA group.
John?
It all depends on what the keyboard player prefers. If they're trying to create a specific sound that's leveraging multiple sounds, sometimes they'll bring those devices in and give me a stereo feed. Otherwise, if I'm running front of house, give me all the signals. Let me help create that sound with you, work with you.
Nice. Alex?
Yeah, if you want to put it into a surround space, you definitely want as many channels as you can from the keyboard. I actually, just for R&D, I added to my synthesizer stuff that I haven't really gotten around to digging into, but I got an RD8 Mark II, specifically because it has all the outs, for all the individual tracks. And so we're going to test that a little bit in surround space in Logic.
Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana's back. Zoom doesn't seem to be able to see USB cameras on Android tablets. Has anyone found a workaround?
Alex?
I don't think it sees it on the iPhone either, because the iPhone doesn't have any USB cameras. Generally, a lot of these conferencing, you'd have to tell us if other apps see them, but generally they're always looking for the local camera, and they just don't think that hard about it because there's usually it's a very much of an edge case for them to look for an external camera to a phone.
Next question.
Brian Becker in Charlottesville, Virginia says, any recommendations for a Mac-based music visualizer software that can react to live input? Does anyone have any experience with Magic Visuals?
Looking. Alex?
Sorry. Yeah, I meant to put my hand up. I am actually, I downloaded it and haven't gotten to play with it, but that is the one that I'm looking at right now is magicmusicvisuals.com. And it looks pretty slick on the outside. There's a couple of them, and it's something that I definitely want to play with. When we started watching some of Todd Reynolds' stuff, I've been, thinking a bit about how to make that work and how we can improve that process. Also, remember, you can use things like Isadora to be responsive to some of those things as well.
Grant?
Just throw in there about Resolume as well. It's a pretty popular piece of software for VJ, and you can do some live input manipulation stuff as well.
So does it do a lot of like designs and so on and so forth within Resolume?
I haven't played with it. I know that they're the latest one. You can manipulate the visualizations. I was going to say Winamp. You could use Winamp from 30 years ago and have the visualizer running and use the line input on that. That'd be fun.
The 80s called and what their technology
is. Yes, but
right.
Pick the llamas, but that's the question. A product that I've used on Windows, and it also is available for the Mac and Linux, is Sonic Visualizer. And if it depends on whether you're just doing it for something pleasant to look at, or if you want to use it for analysis of sounds. Sonic Visualizer will do a little bit of both. It'll convert to waveforms and different views of displays that break apart by frequency, etc., and let you visualize your audio in a large number of ways in scrolling displays that'll scroll as you, like they call waterfall display, that'll scroll your audio as you're inputting it to it. And it'll work with any audio input on any of those computers, Mac, PC, or Linux.
John.
I just want to confirm Resolume does have it. It's a product called ResGen. So they do have a visualizer and you can pump audio into. They have a bunch of different presets of different types of looks. And then the live audio will contribute to how it's actually looking.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from James Haldane in Vancouver, Canada. James says, I upgraded my USB LTE stick to a LINKKEY LTE Cat 4 dongle. Speeds are much faster than the previous device, but it is not compatible with my Cradelpoint router. Does anyone know if any routers work with this type of device? It shows up as a network on a PC.
John?
You will be limited to the bus speed. Technically, you could be faster with the router than you are with the actual chipset. So just understanding what that is, what you're plugging into, if it's USB 3, 3.1, 3.2, whatever, you can get much faster speeds. But if it's a USB 2.0 device, you're going to be limited to, I think it's 54 megabytes.
Alex?
Yeah, and one of the things to always pay attention to when you're doing LTE or what you're working with these is knowing what your service is going to look like. The thing we get ourselves into every time we use a USB LTE stick is issues related to the running out, basically getting capped, getting slowed down. Oftentimes, for instance, if you have one of the things we found is like with a PEP wave, the issue we get into is it'll see like there's 3 Verizon connections, and Verizon somehow figures that out and slows them all down. So there's, you have to be very careful of kind of mixing and matching those if you're going to use them in different situations.
Grant?
For that reason, one thing that particularly if you're live streaming, sort of going one way, a service like speedify.com is quite good to use because it's a VPN. It's essentially a VPN service, but it's a bonded VPN service. So it means that you can have multiple connections coming into your computer, and Speedify will see that as one connection, and then it'll send it across. And you can even choose to do the most redundant option, where you're sending all of the bits over every one of those connections, and then it puts them all back together on the server end, and then out it goes. But sometimes that actually helps to mitigate the potentially the packet sniffing that the cellular services are looking at and seeing that you're live streaming or whatever it is. And so that can help a little bit because it's going through a VPN, and of course then you've got redundancy. So it works quite well.
Next question.
Liberty White says from Atlanta, Georgia, has anyone used a Blackmagic designed camera for vlogging, and what was your experience like?
So I just want to put a little context around there, just because typically I'll use my phone, or if we're just doing some behind the scenes stuff, having, just quick mobile device for ease of use. And I referenced earlier in the show of hoping that Blackmagic does do something more compact, but I was watching a video where they were doing a test to see, okay, how can you use a Blackmagic as a vlog? And for those who are unfamiliar, vloggers are typically, they like to, have the camera at arm's length, and the 4K, the 6K, they're just heavy. So I'm just curious if anyone has and what they use to minimally rig it out. Jeffrey.
So I did do a 6K review about 2 years ago, and one of the things I did do is it worth for the vlogger? And the biggest problem with 4K, 6K is since the screen is on the back, it's not on the front, and there's no way to really flip it around unless you have something like a Feel World or something like that you can attach to it. There's no way to see yourself as you're doing what you're doing. So a lot of vloggers that I know of use that window so they can turn the camera around, they can show an item, they can come back to themselves and get themselves into the center frame as best as possible.
Right.
So I have that. That's the biggest problem that I have with the with doing vlogging from that.
Alex?
Yeah, when I've actually used a variety of the six of Blackmagic cameras, and I almost always have another monitor that's on it on the top of it, flipped around, and then I use a monopod, because it is a little heavy to do anything long. But that seems to work pretty well for me, monopod or a tripod to talk into. But a monopod's nice and portable, and you can kind of move through it that way.
Yeah, that's the key word, the portability factor.
Yeah, I will admit that I use a phone most of the time. If I'm going to put something up quickly, I just use the phone. The quality of the phone has gotten so high that I don't, and short depth of field can be a bit difficult. The phone does an easier job of short depth of field with some of the new features than using an actual short depth of field if you actually need it.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I'm going to support what Alex just said. I'd go to my phone 99 times out of 100, even though I've been a camera guy and have shot for a lot of, and do a lot of even dumbbell things to keep my upper shoulders strong. That 6K fully rigged out with the normal things I put on it is just too heavy for me to try to do anything like that for any extended period of time. 6K weighs quite a bit.
Great. Thank you so much. And we are on the mark at the top of the hour. Thank you, producers, for all of your questions as we make this transition into talking about the metaverse. And just over since Facebook has introduced that they're no longer the parent company being called Facebook, but Meta. And so last year that sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion around the metaverse, even though it's been around for a very long time, especially if you've used games like Second Life, or kids like my little one is all about Roblox, which is, they are existing in an entire virtual realm and socially connecting with each other. Mondays being the day that we talk about innovation and business and bringing those worlds together. I thought it would be great to have Dr. Muhsinah Morris from Morehouse College in Atlanta. And she's a director of the Morehouse Project, for her to just come on and talk to us and share not only the work that she's doing and what Morehouse is doing, but just overall helping us to wrap our minds around the metaverse and how we as virtual producers globally, how we can get ahead of it and what we need to know. So welcome, Dr. Muhsinah Morris.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Well, I guess it's morning for me. I don't know where everyone else is, but have a great day wherever you are.
So we're going to just dive into just having a conversation together. And if you can, I say that a great first place is, what is the metaverse and how did you get involved?
So yeah, that part. So what is the metaverse? So everyone has their own definition of what the metaverse is. And I have my own definition of what it means for me. Currently at this particular time, there is no one concrete definition. So for instance, Facebook says that it is spatial interconnected social networking. And you can access it through virtual reality headsets like the Meta Quest 2, which I actually have one right here. Other people say that it is just an interconnected spatial environment of the web. I call it the embodiment of the internet because that's the easiest way that I can get my students to kind of understand it. So when I talk to people about really trying to understand what the metaverse is, first I try to get them to understand what the internet is, because a lot of people don't really still understand the internet. So therein lies the problem. So once they understand the interconnectedness of how internet and email and networks and how we've gotten all of these things connected, and how we share information, how data is being driven, algorithms are being written, AI, all of this this jargon about computing. Once you get that layer down, then you can talk to them about the metaverse, because the metaverse is just the next iteration or that next step into what the web looks like, or how we experience the web, how we connect with one another. And it's a real social component to it, because we enter using these extended reality devices. So hardware has a huge part to do with it. So no longer will we just enter on our computers or our phones or on our tablets, but also using mixed reality headsets, virtual reality headsets, or even some people just like that layer of reality, that simulated environment over the real world, like using augmented reality. So extended reality plays a huge component in being a part of the metaverse. But at this particular time, I say we have metaverses. People don't like to hear that, but everyone goes to their own idea of what the metaverse is, still through different applications.
And how did you get started? Because Morehouse, and then maybe you can even tell us a little bit about what Morehouse has been building as well.
So I got started, I was a little techie girl anyway. So I played Donkey Kong back in the day. I had a Commodore 64 computer. So I always liked video games, and gaming has been a part of my family's culture. So not just my immediate family where I was raised, but also my family now. So my husband is a network design engineer for AT&T, but his hobby is gaming, literally like World of Warcraft, guild leader. He was a warlock, like all in. So I've watched him play video games, these role-playing games, for a long time. And so I have 5 sons, which means that what am I going to be doing besides sports is usually playing video games or trying to engage with them in their worlds. So Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, all of it has been my world for a very long time. When the pandemic hit, though, I was trying to figure out a way to create a different type of environment for my students to exist in. And I've always been the type of professor that used technology to help visualize molecules, help you visualize the chemistry. So I'm a biomolecular chemist by trade. And I knew people couldn't see molecules. One of the biggest issues was you would talk about orbitals and no one could visualize that. No one could understand what you meant by a particle is the same as a wave, and particle wave duality. And so that would just go over the heads of students. And so I figured if they could visualize it, then they could have a better grasp on it. So I am the science research coordinator for a program called the TRIO Federal Program, which is Upward Bound Math and Science. And so we have our high school students. They were really tunkered out from being on Zoom. And we found a company called Victory XR who had asynchronous virtual reality tethered already to the new next generation science standards, which I needed because I needed it for biology, chemistry, physics, and we used engineering technology, but computer science or anything compatible. So we found them then, and they're the company that helped us build our first Metaversity. So we've been in partnership with them since I started in the summer program as the research coordinator, just to get our students out of the Zoom fatigue that they were undergoing.
Right.
And they had this idea that they hadn't launched about synchronous virtual reality on the Oculus Quest 2. It was a Quest at first, but when we launched, the Quest 2 had already come out, so we were able to use the Quest 2. And so they built a digital twin of Morehouse College, and we were the first Metaversity ever built on Engage.
So when you say that they build Morehouse, the school, the campus,
school,
the rooms,
it's a mirror.
Everything.
It's a mirror campus. So our main campus, our Century campus, which is our most, noteworthy, or the area that represents Morehouse to all of the students, where the student center is and all of the notable buildings that are right in the middle, where graduation is usually held, new student orientation. That part was completely built out. And we have a second version of it. So our first version was kind of like it's whatever a first version of what you think a digital twin would look like. You have the replica, all of the buildings, but now it's even more detailed. Because our campuses connect with Clark Atlanta University and even Spelman somewhat. So we built out more parts of it where our students can roam a little bit freer around campus. And it's really beautiful. So that iteration, we just soft launched that April 5th. with Meta when they launched the new university. So that and a few other buildings on campus are being built out, the interiors of it too.
And now with this digital twin, what does that now give the school the ability to do? And I asked that question also just knowing that our producers and our viewing audience, we're in the media field and or virtual events, and just wrapping our heads around how we can use the metaverse for projects for our clients. So just interesting. And now with Morehouse being in the metaverse, what does that mean?
For my students so Morehouse College is an all Black male college, liberal arts college. It's the alma mater of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and it's really known for its political leaders as well as entertainment leaders like Spike Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, are notable alum. The interesting thing about having this project at Morehouse is exposure and access. It gives our students exposure to cutting edge technology that they otherwise wouldn't have had the access to. It gives them an opportunity to experience something that is going to be needed as they go out into the workforce. So they're able to gain another skill on top of the discipline that they're learning. And as a liberal arts college, it isn't something that is usual for us. It's not something that we would normally do. However, we've got to also change with the times. So it's a way for Morehouse to kind of jump ahead in the forefront and say, we see that this is going to be useful in making sure that our students have the necessary skills to be effective in the workplace. And so why not give them access now so that they can form these skills over time? So not only allowing them to take their courses completely in this metaverse environment, but being able to create the spaces that they want to inhabit. So have the types of events that they want to see happen on campus in a way where they don't always have to leave their rooms. They don't always have to leave their apartments, but they could always take part. And then we have Morehouse Online, where we have non-traditional students who are attending courses online completely. And there are parts of campus life that we would want them to be a part of. So it gives Morehouse this beyond borders kind of brand that allows for our students who are not connected to campus in a residential way like our normal students are, still the capacity to be able to plug in and to be a part of campus life.
That's awesome. And you did share some video beforehand of what that looked like. So if we could get just a sample of it so that our audience can see what that digital twin looks like.
Sure.
Okay, so I see that if you can let me know if you can see that there in the window of just it walking us through that. Oh, right. Is that the chemistry class?
Yes, this is the chemistry class. And so the students were putting together molecules in space. This was a virtual lesson where they had to go through the digestive system and looked at inflamed tissues. They're teleporting into the reproductive system. So we had it in a men's health class taught by Dr. Ethel Vereen. And so students had to learn about the male body. Dr. Ovell Hamilton, he's our history professor. He taught World History 112. So they would do battlefield scenes. They were able to reconstruct different scenes from different time frames. Students were able to go back in time. We even have a La Amistad slave ship that has been created as well, where they go back in time. This is Dr. Tanya Clark. She is our English professor and an Afrofuturist, and she did a cross-disciplinary lesson with us. So it allows us to also work together in the classroom as professors. So across disciplines, which has been the most fun that my students have also had. But it allows them a different experience than just putting together molecules using a molecular modeling set. It gives them the, ability to kind of be in the battle. But it's also shown through the data that we have. And I saw the data slide come up, but I'm not sure if you're ready to cue it. But we have 450 Oculus Quest 2 headsets at Morehouse College.
That's awesome.
Right. So we've had students who have been able to engage in this particular type of education and instruction since the spring of 2021. And not just in general level courses, but in first year experience courses, which have been honors courses, HOP scholars courses, which are linked courses across disciplines like social problems and general chemistry. We've had students who have participated in multimedia and storytelling and journalism courses and now are doing advanced multimedia arts, multimedia and storytelling courses. But we've seen an improvement in their student satisfaction. No students dropped out of courses. Whereas in our Zoom courses, we saw students dropping left, right, and center. Our attendance rates actually went up from 84% to 94%. So about 10 percentage points. We also saw that students' grades went up. So students also were doing better in class. They were more engaged. Their final grade averages improved, as well as their essay grades. Then their presentation morale also improved. So students' ability to present very technical information in class also improved because they were presenting as their avatar self. So I had a student named John who had a speech impediment. And I talk about him quite often and how it really helped him because he was able to come and do his presentations in chemistry in our course and work collaboratively. And literally, he didn't stammer at all. And he said, usually it's the anxiety of being in front of the class that usually causes him to stammer even more. But during, I even have a clip, I didn't give it to you, but there's on my YouTube channel, there's a clip of him giving an interview, but during the entire interview, he doesn't stutter at all. And he graduated. Now he's a STEM teacher. So it's like the whole cycle of restoring joy to a student who didn't even see themselves walking across the stage. And now they're pouring life back into other students doing the same exact thing. So
right.
Really exciting work.
And with you saying that, even like these students, they've grown up in the digital age. So the gaming aspect, whatnot, and being able to move into education, where just the fluidity of what home life might look like and bringing that in, the comfortability that comes with that is phenomenal. And I'm looking to see if any of the panel has any questions, because then we can jump right into our questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. Well, Bill, first question.
Absolutely. The first one comes from Douglas Carmichael. He says, do you think we'll see common interoperability standards so users on multiple virtual reality platforms can interact with each other?
I hope so. That is the goal. I mean, honestly, that is the one thing that I think is missing from it, which makes it so hard to envision it as a metaverse. And it seems as if we have a lot of multiverses. So it's kind of interesting that the Spider-Man movie just came out, because when they entered the multiverses, it was kind of like, oh, this kind of like what's going on right now with the metaverse. You have so many different platforms and none of them talk to each other. And so you cannot carry your avatar self or who you represent from one space to the next. And that is problematic for a lot of people. But I think over time, we'll get there. That is the goal.
Courtney?
Yes, thanks for explaining that, Doctor. I would think that interoperability between virtual realities would be difficult because each virtual reality creates its own space. And so to find, you can't really have an avatar that appears in a stadium and one that appears in a catacomb at the same time because the virtual space is different for you to wander around. Now, there might be a way to set up some type of interoperability between the avatars, like she says, the metadata exchange for the avatars, the definition of the avatar. So you could create an avatar and it would work on several different systems, but having it move gracefully from one virtual reality to the next virtual reality may be fairly difficult to transition across those two interconnected realities.
Absolutely. I agree. And thank you for putting the tech jargon on that for me, Courtney, because I'm definitely not a technologist. I am a chemist and an enthusiast. But what I have seen and what I do know is there has to be some way that it can get done. But that's why education is so important, and exposure for our young people is really important right now. So I have moved from the chemistry department to the education department so that I can train pre-service teachers on how they can best use this technology in their classroom. The goal is to get these young people now who want to be educators to be able to use this type of technology all the way from K-12. So that once it's infused in the classrooms, their students are getting access and exposure to this type of technology younger. Once they do that, I think that more ideas will formulate and you'll hit a more diverse group of people. And then ideas like what you were talking about, Courtney, we'll be able to do more seamlessly because we need more minds, or else we're going to have like a bottleneck of talent. There's not that many people who are really well versed in the technicalities of it. And not everyone is a coder, but if you can capture their attention in some type of way, in small ways, younger, then I think that you can get them captivated in the technical sides and the aspects of it. It won't seem like such a hard leap in the future.
Yes. Alex.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of us are watching with Apple is as Apple gets ready to go into AR and VR is whether they're going to try to create their own social network there or whether they're going to build libraries. To your point, not everyone wants to be a coder. And what Apple has been good at in the past is handing us formats, handing us libraries, and so on and so forth, so that we can create our own platforms. But one of the advantages of that, if Apple did that at least on the Apple platform, a lot of the communities could theoretically be interconnected because they're using the same libraries in the back end. So it just makes it easier for them to pass between those communities.
Yeah, we're really waiting to see what Apple does because they are really good about making sure that it's user-friendly for all. So,
yeah. Next question.
Brian Becker is up next from Charlottesville, Virginia. He says, which platforms do you see with the most promise in this area?
Ooh, great question.
So my favorite platform to use because it works well in the classroom is the Engage platform. I have been on other platforms, but for actual meeting spaces or working for education, I think the Engage platform works best above all because it has classroom management tools in it. It has ways that you can summon students, you can seat them, you can give assessments, you can pull and retrieve that assessment data, you can record your sessions, you can do a whole lot of different tricks and tips. And it's not a really heavy lift like for people to understand how to use. So it's easy for the educators to jump in after maybe one or two good tutorial sessions with them and already be ready to work in their classroom spaces. They already have the locations built out. And if you work with a good software development team, or if you already are a coder and you create on Unity, or then you can just easily plug it in. So it's kind of like a plug and play. I like Engage, but that's because I use it for a particular matter. Now for other instances, like in terms of fun and, hanging out, some people like Horizon Worlds. I mean, I've been on almost all of them, but I don't try to do too much of the social part of it. Other than I like the Fit VR, the Trip VR app, gaming, doing my own games and watching videos and going into 360 worlds and those kind of things. But now my kids, they do a lot of the socialization.
Next question.
Brian Becker in Charlottesville, Virginia, back again with, there is a lot of play-to-earn games that seem problematic at best and total scams at worst. Can play-to-earn be a sustainable model for meta experiences that are enjoyable?
That's a good question, to be honest. I'm not sure because sometimes that takes the fun out of wanting to be there in that space. It's like a lot of ads popping up on you when you're on the internet. You get to a place where you kind of like, okay, this is a drag. I really don't want to be there. And they had to kind of change that model when social media came out too. There were so many ads that people were seeing. Nobody wanted to kind of be in this space anymore. And it became a drag. And it felt like you were also being tracked and targeted. So the same thing with the play to earn games. How do people really feel about that in terms of, and then there are not really lots of rules and regulations around purchasing. I mean, that security is an issue for a lot of people.
Very much so. And I look at it at how that impacts, to Brian's question, just impacts kids, just seeing that in their games and what that means whenever my daughter's coming in and playing just that wellness part of things. So it's definitely, this is just one of those many issues, just even preparing for today, that is being spoken about, because as we're building out the metaverse and what it means and what systems have to change going in for the wellness, mental health wellness as well. So.
Yeah, it's creating a huge fear of missing out. FOMO for our kids even. So like my 5-year-old is like, I need to have this. I'm like, no, you don't. And, so it's like, you're not going to miss out on the next level. You don't have to level up when you're, but they have to, it's urgent need. So.
Right. Next question.
Morgan Price, Victoria, British Columbia. Wonderful to hear from Dr. Morris. Thank you. How do you think Metaverse can be designed to have a positive impact for mental health and used in healthcare, perhaps?
Oh, wow. So we started something called Metaverse, Meditation Mondays in the Metaverse for our students at Morehouse this semester, primarily because COVID has done a great number of things to a lot of people in terms of just, we didn't get back to campus after Omicron hit in December until mid-February. And then we're historically Black college and university, and we had a number of bomb threats on our on our campuses. So all of those things with students losing people, losing parents, losing jobs, losing opportunities, things being shut down, the campus being shut down, just so many things were happening. I knew that it was time to really start addressing mental health and wellness for our students. And so we did one this morning. We do them 6 a.m. on Monday mornings, where we just come together and we do just build community, talk about different subjects. So peace, adversity, strategies to help in the midst of adversity. And then we'll go into a meditation. So we've talked about different types of meditation, breath work, and using different frequencies, or we use the Trip VR app as well. So we do, and they have time alone that they do that, and they're journaling their way through, but just trying to give them a sense of understanding of how to process their feelings is really important. And to bring them back to, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to express the fact that there's some real issues here. There's some real things going on in the world, and they're affecting you, and that you have feelings too. Because a lot of times our young people are overlooked, or even young men primarily don't talk about mental health. So our men's health course that Dr. Ethel Vereen created was particularly created because men don't deal with their health. They wait till the plane blows up and the rocket explodes, and then they decide to want to deal with it. So it's like, let's try to do some preventative things. And so just teaching them a mindful practice is allowing us an ability to meet the students where they are. So I'm also on the student welfare committee, and one of our missions is to make sure that our students are mentally and physically well. And so we're going to also start fitness VR with our kinesiology program in the fall. So we're really excited about the things that the Metaverse can offer in terms of health and wellness. And while I'm thinking about it, there is a young man by the name of Christopher Lafayette, and he has he's the founder of Gatherverse. So gatherverse.org is his organization, and they're doing athletics in the Metaverse. So they did a Gatherverse summit where they take a humanity first approach to the Metaverse, but and that was sponsored by HP and Meta, and that happened in February. But moving forward, they're going to be talking about athletics in the Metaverse, mindful practices, Web 3.0, also music in the Metaverse. So all of the different things, trying to just bring this kind of community and interconnectedness together. And my company, Metaverse United, which is at unitethemetaverse.com, will be doing some events with them as well in order to help people understand how to really process what the Metaverse is and how big it is, but then how you can also find where you belong in this embodiment of the internet.
Next question.
Eric Nathan in Bellingham, Washington. What kind of bandwidth is necessary, and do you see the Metaverse becoming mobile-centric over time?
That's a good one.
I hope so. I hope it becomes mobile centric. I used to have these cute little glasses on my desk that shows what I wanted it to look like, but I don't have them anymore because I had to take them out for another demo. But when you're able to just like slide on your glasses and like click a button, and it becomes where you're not having to put on something as bulky as this, and this is actually rather light and it's untethered normally. So when it becomes accessible in that way, where even if it's not glasses, or people could just like stick something right here at their ear, but it'll, have like AR, and it kind of gives them different readings or overlays of whatever they're looking at, give them information, and then it's voice controlled or something like that. That would be really neat. Do I feel like that's close? Not at all. I think that we have a long way to go, And as a chemist, I can only think like in terms of how are we going to power these types of devices, and how can we do it with new materials? And so, I start going into my molecular mind then about what's needed.
Alex?
Yeah, and there's a lot that can be done in the current phones. I think it's mostly a matter of figuring out how far we can push it and the cost of development. If we look at something like a Robo Recall on the Quest, and before that on Oculus, that's a lot of geometry that was efficiently and very fluidly put in front of the viewer, and that's more detail than we see in most of the metaverse right now. And that's still a couple years old technology, and so that it's there. I know that for us, we consider 2 million polygons kind of the outer edge of what the last 2 generations of the iPhone will do. And then, and so that's still, when I got into games 30 years ago, I had a budget of 3,000 polygons for the whole level. so 2 million polygons to me seems like an immense world that we can use, and we don't really see those yet. And so I think a lot of it is efficiently thinking about it and people actually doing it. But and I think that there's a limitation there's a limitation in people who are thinking about the metaverse and their ability to build the metaverse. And so that, and then the people who know how to build the metaverse, how to build the 3D models and everything else, are busy doing something else. so it's hard. I think it's hard. We get a lot of really kind of low resolution solutions because the people who are thinking about it aren't able to actually do it.
Eric?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of add to that was how do you deal with students who don't have proper bandwidth? They might be in an area where the bandwidth is really limited. How do you deal with that?
So that is a problem, and it's not easily solved. So one of the things that we're actually looking into is partnering with, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Wi-Fi. So instead of using wireless internet, using light for connectivity. So there's a professor in Scotland, Harold Haas. He and I are thinking about doing a pilot study together to test connectivity, because even on campus, we're a primarily residential program. The Wi-Fi, just trying to get students all 450 headsets. Now, you have students that are taking courses that are in hybrid settings. Even though we're residential, some students are also taking courses online, but they're also doing research online. They're in their dorm rooms, they're on campus. So our servers are, at max capacity. Like there's not that much, and we're in the city, we're in the inner city. So, and then there are college campuses that are adjacent to us as well. So we're kind of like in this space where there's not a lot of capacity. And in order to increase that, how can we increase that? And hotspots, that's not going to create any better connection. But if we could use another type of source, then perhaps we can. So looking into Li-Fi, they actually presented at, was it CMS this past year? But I think it was, but I'm not sure. But he has a TED Talk that is available. Harold Haas is his name, Haas. But he's definitely looking for partnerships to test his technology. But so far, it's proven to be very exciting. So I'm excited about working with him.
Thank you for sharing that, because it's definitely important on just even the technology aspect and for students, the accessibility. And if this is anything that goes to scale, everyone has to be able to have access to it. Courtney?
I was going to say, I think the phone probably is a good way to do virtual reality. Remember, the first virtual reality goggles were, a piece of cardboard that you put your phone into.
Oh, man.
Right.
And it created a virtual world, and because it has all of the sensors in it to track GPS and virtual movement of your head, It seems like it would be a natural to be able to interface it, but whether or not it has enough rendering power to render a virtual world in real time is the big question. And I think we're moving toward that as we get more and more sophisticated processors into phones. I think it will become more of a mobile-centric field that will interact with the metaverse.
That'd be wonderful. Next question.
Comes from me in San Diego. And I just was curious. I know Second Life was a huge metaverse idea driver, but I'm curious as to where Animal Crossing might fit in on the metaverse history timeline. And it's a little personal because I'm pretty convinced it taught my son to read. I mean, yes, to his teachers, thank you, each and every one. But the real motivator for him to jump over that thing and want to read for himself was desperation to know what everybody was saying in Animal Crossing.
So
that's awesome.
To be honest, the way that we taught our children, all of my boys were early readers, was through video gaming, to be quite honest. They wanted to play these games, Subway Surfer, like just little mobile games or whatever. And in order to get them to understand the controls, we would make them read. And in order for my sons, this was a long time ago, like when Zelda was out. So like, because I have a 26-year-old. So like I'm dating myself a little bit. So my oldest is 26, but the baby is 5. So listen, I've been raising children for like 2.5 decades. If I pick up one more Lego, that's all I'm saying. But no, for real. And they hurt. So, but we think that our children playing video games has been what has been their saving grace in school, and that has allowed them to be such critical thinkers. So my oldest son is electrical engineering, and now he's a UI UX designer. So he decided he wanted to change his mind because he's more of a creative, but that electrical engineering and that coding background still is there. And they were early readers because they wanted to get to the next level. And the only way they could get to the next level was to read all that they could, and we would not help them. Like we don't help them even now, especially if it's something that they can figure out. So I have a 5-year-old that's like, hey, Google, what's 5 times 30?
Isn't it amazing how they do that?
So
yes. And Bill, just to your point, yes, Animal Crossing is the thing. That is all my nieces, my daughter and nephew. So it'll be interesting to see how that does play out on the overall timeline, since it is, it's reaching a much younger audience as well. So that's a good point that you bring up. Next question.
And I felt good about it because it's a pretty kind word. This was my second question, Dr. Morris, as the avatarization, and I don't know if that's even actually a word, of the metaverse continues. Do you think that it might have impacts on increasing anxiety for people because they interact in these spaces? And when it comes to them interacting in real life, does this cause issues?
Yes, because profile pictures and filters did. So if you ever seen the catfish movement, where people are like, now, you don't look like that, because now everyone can put a filter on and you can be real cute when you want to give a video, and then you can set your scene. I can make it look real nice and neat. But if I was to flip this camera in this room, y'all would say, now, Dr. Morris, seriously, get those toys up off the ground. Because there was a child in this office, but it's the same kind of thing. So students already have anxiety around avatars. So we're studying culturally appropriate avatar creation and what that really means in the metaverse as a part of our Morehouse in the Metaverse study. So we have an African-American studies professor, Dr. Monique Earl Lewis, who is looking with some students into just what avatars represent to people, how people feel about themselves being represented. Because even in the Engage platform, for instance, if you don't have good connectivity, you'll show up as a low poly resolution like model of yourself. Well, then you don't have your full body, you don't have the clothes on that you put on, you spend all this time designing this avatar that looks like you. Mine is face enabled. So you might have a face enabled one, but then you'll end up with this kind of generic misrepresentation of yourself, where the color is off, where the hair texture is different, or you didn't even know that was you until you saw your name above you. So it can be kind of jarring because you think you're entering this world and you're represented the way you want to, and then you're not. And so for a lot of people, it's been off-putting, and they've been like, oh, I don't want to do this because the technology is just not where I want it to be, or it just doesn't make me feel like I'm being represented in this space the way that I want to. And I can tell you, as a woman of color, that has been an issue too. Just hair textures, trying to get hair textures, hairstyles, or, facial features that are more pronounced to look like myself. So I do the face-enabled avatars more than I normally do, like try to create it on my own with the features that are given, because it's easier for me to show up as my own actual face than it is for me to try to create a representation of myself that doesn't end up feeling authentic or like me.
Which has been an issue in gaming overall. It's getting better. There are steps taken there, but how much more it means in this space, in the metaverse. Alex?
To take it the other direction, do we think that as the avatars get better at representing what we want to be represented as, the people become more resistant to wanting to interact with each other in the real world because they're comfortable with that kind of mask that they have there, as opposed to interacting with people directly?
It's interesting because I kind of felt that way going to these conferences now that are in person, but you've only interacted with these people on Zoom. And so like now we're doing in-person conferences, and it's like, now I'll talk to you on Zoom. We've had face-to-faces, and it's like, you've only had to see from here up. Well, I haven't worn shoes for one in like 2 years. So it's like, I'm supposed to be able to walk in these fields.
I listen to you in barefoot right now. So
so like it's all of the things. So you have anxiety, and I can imagine as a young person really having that type of kind of insecurity where you're just like, I showed up this way in class, and now I have to actually go in class, and now I'm not gonna be this fit avatar version of myself. I put on a few COVID pounds is what I call them, or whatever the case may be. But, you do kind of feel awkward. And I felt that way just moving from where we've been over the last few years to being face to face. And it's just kind of like, at the end of the day, it's something that we're going to have to learn how to transition into,
Courtney.
Yeah, I think the ability to generate an alternate personality in the avatar range that would allow you to, the bullies can actually be, 98-pound weaklings. In the metaverse, you can hide behind your avatar. So I would think you could use the ability to make yourself appear however you want in the metaverse would be helpful in protecting people who feel bullied in the real world, and it's tough for an avatar to give you a swirly in the metaverse when they can in the real world.
It's true. I know that students still, they're still in certain social, that's why I don't say go on too many social sites. There's still this social uncomfortable, people still invade people's spaces. So, they have the bubbles, but those aren't always enough. Or you can mute or make yourself kind of invisible, but then it feels like you're not a part of the room. So you don't want to show up in those spaces. So it's really challenging because you go into these open metaverses or these metaverse platforms, and they're supposed to be social spaces, but unless you go in with a group of people that they're not really all that fun when you go in alone. VR chat rooms are not like, to me, they can be a little creepy. So I just don't, it's not my favorite place to go. For some of my students, they find it to be real fun, but they end up going in as groups of, their peers. And so they're there exploring and doing things together. So it makes a difference. It just depends.
Next question.
John Foltz in Seelings Grove, Pennsylvania says, how much prep time does it take to bring a meta course to life?
We did it in 60 days. I do not recommend. Houston, listen, do not recommend the 60-day model, but it can be done, and it can be done really well. And I think we did a great job in our first 4 courses, which were Advanced Inorganic Chemistry, We did it in World History 112, our men's health course, and then we did the cross-disciplinary lessons with English. So we were able to pull it off. But I felt like I was always building the spaceship as it was going to space, that kind of thing. So now we have a framework. And so the second semester was much easier as we were building the courses because we already knew exactly what to expect, what challenges we were going to run into. Okay, we don't want to try that. That was too ambitious the last time. Like, stick to meeting the student learning outcomes. Now we knew what we wanted to measure, what kind of things we wanted to adhere to. So what we've decided to do, so Victory XR is offering a micro-credentialing where professional educators can get this professional development credit and this certification on Metaverse, teaching in the Metaverse space. So, and then Morehouse is partnering with them to help them build out the micro certification for culturally responsive spaces. So one of the things that we realized as a historically Black college and university is that we wanted our spaces to be similar to what our students would experience being on a HBCU campus. We wanted them to have the same type of experience, that same type of climate. So like if they saw African art hanging in, outside of buildings, or if they saw different posters in our labs or in our, that show Black inventors or scientists and things like that, or if they saw Black fraternities and sororities being represented around campus, that those same things would be in the classroom spaces or in the different artifacts that were around in the spaces that they inhabited while in class, so that it felt familiar to them and it felt like they were being, that they were in a space that represented them, so they were more comfortable.
So just from, even though you would not recommend that 60 days, if you can give us kind of a glimpse of what that looked like from the people power in bringing that to life. So where did that start? I can tell you, it started on Saturdays. I say Saturday is for VR because literally we had no more time. We have heavy teaching loads. So literally everything happened at night or on Saturdays, but it really started with us carving out student learning outcomes. So for all courses, since we're college professors, we have autonomy in our classroom. We don't really have to necessarily align with a governing body, like a central governing body. I mean, for your own particular discipline, yes, you have an accrediting body. Like we have the American Chemical Society. I had to make sure that we were meeting the student learning outcomes that the American Chemical Society says that a student that has taken inorganic chemistry would have met. So those things, yes. But in terms of how we deliver the lesson plan, that was all up to us. What we didn't want to do was to give students the same type of experience that they could have gotten on Zoom in a headset. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to make sure that they were building something, making something, creating something, gaining a skill, developing something, working together, collaborating. The only time that they were really sitting still and doing anything where it was similar to a classroom was when they took some assessments. So there were some assessments that were given and I would sit them in the lecture hall and they would take them. But I made sure that these particular assessments did not take them longer than 20 minutes. So it wasn't like you were sitting there for just an egregious amount of time. They were all like 5 to 10 question quizzes or quick, recaps so that I could get an understanding of where they were in terms of the knowledge or the lesson that we did for that particular day. But nothing that was going to be like, oh my gosh, this is 60 minutes. I have to sit here for such a long time in this headset. Like I could have done this in the real world, Right.
It wasn't that kind of experience.
Yeah, and I ask that because of our community and whether it be production wise or virtual events, being very sensitive to what the audience experience is like, to your point of how long these questions take and all of that. So I was just curious around what the planning time went into and how many people were involved, just so that it helps us also think, hey, if we're going to make this leap into the metaverse, we're actually taking a lot of what we're already doing here and just transposing and shifting some things.
So I tell people all the time, work with the team. So with us, it was us four and we were brave in it. Like we were going out into the deep, pioneering this thing on our own. And we didn't really have many people to fall back on. We had our educational partners, which was Victory XR. They have a wonderful team of support, but they do software development. They are builders and we are educators. So we work together in tandem. We had a spreadsheet that said what scenes we wanted developed, were there any particular parts of campus that we perhaps wanted built out differently, what artifacts maybe perhaps we wanted to add, did we find any 3D assets that we wanted integrated, or and then they would teach us how to do that. They also trained us on like how to hold your hands. I think those are things like what they brought to the table was a lot of their professional development was about like how to present like you know what you're doing as an avatar, because you could very easily look like this, in space, or not understand like how you're holding your hands, or you're just not aware of it because you have joysticks versus, usually you're not holding anything in your hands while you're teaching, but help you with dexterity, how to move, getting your sea legs. And by sea legs, you can get a little nauseated when you're in these headsets. So, everyone has a story. I have a story, but just trying to make sure that you spend enough time in the headset that when it's time to go into the classroom setting, that you're not feeling awkward. But we worked in teams, everything we did collaboratively. So even if it wasn't your discipline, and we were a small group, so it wasn't our discipline, but it didn't matter. We would go and check and make sure that the professor felt comfortable. And I think that was like our saving grace, because it saved us time. So if it was some artifacts that they needed placed in their classroom, or they wanted something designed and maybe they didn't understand how to do it well, we couldn't always go to Victory XR and say, hey, we need to just know how to put this together. It wasn't kind of that situation. So we learned how to do it on our own and then work together to get it up and running. So now that's kind of the model. So our teachers now are training the next cohort of faculty that are coming in. Yeah.
Awesome. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, the iOS development has become a career pathway and life changer for millions of people. What VR and or Metaverse development platform will take that role in the future?
Unity or Unreal right now, to be honest. There's also other platforms that are coming up that are being mentioned. So I don't know, Metaverse, Alan Smithson has a platform, Metaverse, but it's VRSE. So that instead of verse, the VR is in the middle. So he has his platform that's up and coming as well. But right now, people are building primarily on Unity and then Unreal. There's people starting to build in Unreal. But I see more of like our theater arts or digital design, graphic design, production, cinema arts, more of those students using Unreal than I see just our regular professors or teachers or whatever. So we've used Unity or are starting to teach our students in Unity.
All right, thanks. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama is up next. What was the inspiring trigger for the school to implement VR effectively?
We didn't relent. It was the most fun that I had doing this. And I've been teaching for 21 years. And to be honest, this really helped. I know at a time during COVID, especially, we were supposed to, I guess, be sad, but honestly, we were having the time of our lives. I mean, even though we were at home and, we were cooped up in the house, we had, I guess, some kind of escape. It's like we were building and creating something. We were doing something new that was going to enhance the lives of students in the future. And it really felt transformative. So I don't know, it was our enthusiasm that really kept it going. And our president, Thomas, and our provost, Kendrick Brown, they really have been huge supporters of Morehouse in the Metaverse project. And interestingly enough, when I named it Morehouse in the Metaverse, it was during the summer of 2021. And everyone was like, you're going to have to break down this Metaverse thing. I don't know where you got that word from. And then when Facebook came out and they changed their name to Meta, and the Facebook Connect conference, everyone, my email box just blew up. Like everyone was, oh my God, I can't believe you knew it. I was like, it not like it was obvious, but it was kind of obvious that this was going to be the next big step. But like I said, my family and everyone, we've been in this gaming world for quite some time.
Yes. Next question.
Jason Beish in Albuquerque, New Mexico. How has course development had to change at Morehouse as a result of going virtual? Any pitfalls to avoid for other university administrators?
It's the support. It's the support and the teachers, making sure they have the enough resources. So computing power, time out of the classroom to be able to develop, because taking time to transform over from what you normally do to a virtual space, even online, is different. And I think online learning didn't work for a lot of people because it's not the same to just do what you did in the classroom on a Zoom platform. That's not really online education, but that's what online education became. And so we don't want metaverse learning to become that same thing where it's like we're just doing what we did in the classroom where we worksheeted you to death. In the metaverse, you just so happen to have a headset on. So that's not going to be the goal. The goal is to make sure that students are getting engagement and that they're able to go into scenes, go back in time, do things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do, take field trips around the world, integrate and socialize with different cultures, and be present with the material.
Next question.
Next question comes from Harshid in Daytona Beach, Florida. What does accessibility look like in the metaverse?
Accessibility for me means that we have connection, like students are able to connect. And that's why I said the internet and connection to the internet is one of the biggest things that we need to start looking at. And to be honest, if it's not accessible for all people, then it's going to be really a hard sell, because it's hard to get people interested in stuff when we're still dealing with other things. Like you still have students who come to school hungry. You still have students that don't have, stable homes. You still have people that don't have running water. So it's kind of hard to be talking about the metaverse. It's almost like back in the 60s when, there was civil unrest and they were talking about going to the moon, and people were talking about, well, we don't care about the moon because we care about the fact that, we don't have equal rights, and that's, an issue. And so there's so many different layers to this that we're going to have to start trying to address to be able to get us all on the same page. But that's why it's so important to really think about this in terms of humanity. How can we build this for all people? And the mobile aspect is really important, but connectivity, because you still have people who don't have good internet connection. You still have people that are unable to even, access good cable, satellite. So there's a lot when it comes to how much further this has to go for it to develop where it's accessible by all people. And then you talk about accessibility for those who have neurodiverse learning issues. So I have a son that has autism, and how do I make it a safe and secure place for him to be where he can socially interact and engage? I know he knows how to get on the computer now, but how do I make this a safe space for him? And then what about other people who have physical disabilities as well? So not just cognitive disabilities, but those with physical disabilities. So that is really a huge challenge. And we haven't done a real great job right now with accessibility, even in the internet. We're still trying. But I had a blind student that came to my presentation at the ACS conference, and she said, Dr. Morris, this sounds all great and everything, but I'm blind, and how could I experience it? And I asked her, how did she experience the internet? She said, well, not that well, because when there's a PDF, if people don't put enough text or any text, it just says PDF, PDF, PDF. So if you have a scene that is created and you don't have enough text to visually explain what that scene is, for someone who is blind, you're just talking about the moon that they can't see, feel, or, get anything from. So it doesn't make any difference or change their lives. It just makes it more difficult for them to be able to access it and connect. So we have to start really thinking about ways in which we can develop technologies that's going to include all of us. And then how can we make it where not just our youngest young are safe there, but then our elders as well, and protect their financial health and well-being in their older years, because, a lot of scams do happen in this space too.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, what IT infrastructure and content production skills will be most useful in a metaverse-centric future?
In a metaverse, so IT skills, so cybersecurity, that would be one. I would definitely say just understanding. So TCP/IP was really important back in when the internet was coming to be, right? So there are going to be different operating systems that you have to understand when using the, metaverse. So I'm not a technologist, so I wouldn't know all of the interoperability, like how APIs actually connect and talk to one another. But I know that that's going to be an issue. But my biggest one is dealing with privacy and security. So like, if you're into cybersecurity, then I think that you really have a built-in skill set there.
Yeah. Alex?
Yeah, I think that for a variety of reasons, one of the biggest skills that we're going to run out of people for really fast is 3D content generation. So building 3D models. You're seeing attempts at this. So a lot of the photogrammetry that, the object capture that Apple's doing, and a lot of other things. But the problem with it is it generates very heavy models that are actually hard to interact with in the VR space. And so building those clean models are going to be very important. And if you're good at this right now, you're employed. so there's going to be this massive push. I think that again, as Apple rolls more out of what it's doing, there's suddenly going to be a snap, and it's going to happen literally in a couple of weeks not from now, but from when Apple makes announcements. There'll be this massive push for people who can build these models for Apple's platforms, and there won't be enough people to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. Since the collapse of the Google Daydream platform, do we really think this will be a long-term solution or just a stepping stone to something else?
Do we think what will be a long-term solution?
The metaverse. That the metaverse would be a good long-term solution.
I'm not sure. It's what we have right now. It's what we're trying to, figure out. And I think that no one has a clear answer. And we didn't know what the internet was going to be when it started. It was kind of like just having an encyclopedia on a computer, and you hated when someone had a picture. Web 1.0, you couldn't download, you hated it. You wanted to just see the text. If I could just get the text, that would be great. And then, it got to the point where we were interacting and able to then socialize and, purchase things. And so it became a part of our day-to-day life. Now you won't even walk to the bathroom without your telephone, so the phone and it being mobile and being a part of you, you don't have to go sit at a desk, that kind of thing is kind of what the metaverse, when it gets there, it will be for us. And I think it will open up new opportunities, but it'll have its own share, set of problems too, as well. But next step is the best next step. I think it's the most fun next step to explore.
And part of it is going to be who really gets there and dominates first to really lay the land of everything else and set the trend. So it'll be interesting to see and watch. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand's in with this. In the early days of Second Life, bands would live stream, but hackers would kill their stream and then brag about it on Facebook. I was asked to try and mitigate that, but couldn't. Thoughts about hacking in the metaverse?
Oh my God. There are such killjoys in the world, and that's what you learn about people. I'm serious. It's like, people just want to have fun, just want to go and have good, clean fun. But it's like that, even playing some of these role-playing games where you just get raided in the middle of the night, and then like all of the things that you collected and all your artifacts are gone. Like that happened to us on Ark. I was so outdone when our compound got raided and we were all asleep, and somehow we left our server up, whatever, any case. Maybe so those things happen, and you have just trolls that just like to do that. The problem with it happening in the metaverse is the fact that there's real people purchase and pay for a lot of these assets that they have, or things that they will have. And, that could be, right now, is that a crime? You know what I mean? Like, there are no real laws. People say it's like the Wild Wild West, but I don't even know if it's like that. It's just kind of like, people do what you want to. And so it's giving those people who have real poor mindsets, and they just want to troll you, free roam too. But all of that is going to have to be figured out. I know people want it to be a decentralized environment in some ways, but in some ways it's going to have some kind of governance structure, to keep it all together, or else it's not going to be a place where anybody wants to be.
Yeah. Alex?
Yeah, what we find is I've done thousands of live streams, and not in the metaverse, but just in general. And what we find is about 3% of the population creates about 80 to 90% of the problems. And I think that it's going to lead to a more intentional community structure where it's fairly closed, because you just, you find that if you just shut the door, and then bring people in slowly, it becomes something that you can control, and you have very little of that. And that gets very addicting, to not have a lot of trouble, be able to go somewhere that doesn't have a lot of chaos, and so as long as you can keep it thriving and not be sterile.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Which countries will lead the combination of pervasive connectivity and government/academic support to maximize the potential of a VR, AR, XR, and the metaverse future?
I mean, I'm an American, so I'm gonna root for the USA. So that part, because that's what I'm seeing. I haven't seen much coming from too many other places where they have 10 metaversities being built out in their nation, as we have. So I don't know. For me, it's the United States.
Do you think that this is a huge opportunity for, obviously you're doing it, but this is really for, as we look at new employment into a technical realm, almost a digital blue class opportunity, which is that it doesn't require high technical skills, but does require to understand the basic processes.
Yes. And I think it's going to open up more opportunities for people to be employed, to have meaningful employment, better quality of life. And it can allow people who are, just didn't have an opportunity to go to college to be able to get credentialed in a field that is fun for them. You know what I mean? It's going to be enjoyable. It's going to give them a career pathway. And I think that they can map that out. And then in specific disciplines. So it's not specifically just tech, it's not just software engineering or just computer science heavy. But if you are an artist, or if you are a historian, or if you want to go into healthcare in some kind of way, you will be using XR technologies, or, any part of this in order to be better in that discipline: architecture, construction, mechanics, manufacturing. All of these different fields will need people who are well versed in using this technology, but also creating in this technology, because they know how to use the machinery, they know how to develop it, they know how to troubleshoot. And so they're going to need those kind of people, and they're going to need their expertise to be able to help them get the type of technology that they need to be able to do this well. So I think it provides a lot of opportunity.
Eric?
I was just going to ask, are you seeing other universities coming to you for advice?
I cannot keep up with my email box. And that's a good thing, it's a great thing. So I've been on a bit of a tour circuit here. I've been at South by Southwest. I've been at ASU GSV Summit. I've been at the American Chemical Society Conference. I'm going to EDUCAUSE in June. But I've talked to educators all over and done different webinars with the Chronicle of Higher Education and Unity Technologies and the Unity for Humanity Summit and Augmented World Expo. And so I have talked to so many different educators, and so many people are so excited about it. So my calendar is rolling right now with people who want to know more about it, how to do it. And I'm happy to help, them get there, the thing is getting academic affairs involved for colleges. It's like, how do you get academic affairs to say, we want to support you in this? And the good thing about us is that we already had that buy-in from before. So that was our saving grace. And then, like I said, we wouldn't let go. Once we were in and locked and loaded, it was like, oh, we're having way too much fun with this. So we just started writing grants and finding money and leveraging the power of being an academic to empower ourselves and say, okay, this is a project that we want to see last. And so how can we build bones and structure around it for it to do it? And so the Metaversity model came out of Morehouse, and our ability to do just that, not just the academic side, but also the social component side of campus life. So we've done a gala in the Metaverse, our Candle in the Dark Gala, which is our largest fundraiser. We've tethered that to a proof of attendance protocol or proof of experience token, the poets, the NFTs, where that people are able to get access to just experiencing what the next level of Web 3.0 is in terms of creating their own crypto wallets and those kind of things, and they can walk through that process. But also getting our students involved in the Meditation Mondays and then the Fit VR. Like I said, we're doing esports. So we have an esports team, but just all kind of different ways to just get students involved, and not just that academic side where we make VR the classroom. So it's not a tool or accessory. Students literally show up in class as their avatar. It's like, get your avatar to class. Come on, lock into your headset right now. We make VR the classroom, and then also have that fun component, that side where they can have these social interactions and have a good time also in this space.
Next question.
And the last one here in the panel, Jeremy Horn, Bay Area, California, gets the last one. What trends do you see in the VR productivity space, that is VR desktops?
Computing power. We need more computing power. So even though I have students that are able to access our platform on their desktops, they don't have enough computing power to render themselves in anything other than the low poly avatar. Or sometimes it won't run the program at all. It just depends on how old the computers are. So computing power is an issue still for people who do want to still access it via desktop application. And we don't make our students use the Oculus Quest 2 either. So if they have, like I had a student that had problems with their eyes, had eye surgery, couldn't use the headset, I wouldn't even issue one to them because I knew you would try it. But those kind of the situations, we do offer alternatives, and you can access it from your computer. But if you don't have a computing power, then it's also like shooting yourself in the foot, and it's not a good experience, and you don't stay connected, or you drop off. Like, connectivity is an issue, but also just being able to be in that space for a long period of time is also a problem. So where do I see that going? We still have a long way to go in terms of making computers affordable for people that have enough space and video cards and all those kind of things.
Dr. Morris, this has been a fantastic hour and a little bit, because all the questions that were rolling in from the panel, we want to just say thank you so much for sharing, and any last words before we close out the show.
Absolutely. So it has been a pleasure spending this hour with you all. I look forward to seeing you all again. I tell everyone I am going to be the Oprah of the Metaverse, because I am in edutainment. Okay. So the reason why my classes have always been a success, and I'm Professor of the Year at Morehouse College, is because my class is a whole show. Okay. So we're going to give you bite-sized chunks of information, okay, on our Metaverse talk show, where you can find out about the Metaverse in digestible pieces. So it's not going to be heavy on the jargon, but I'm going to bring people in, and I'm going to let the technologists like Alex and Eric and Courtney and all of you all that are here come into the space, and you can talk all of the jargon you want to, and then I'll break it down in layman's terms for the people. But you can find me at unitethemetaverse.com, and my company is Metaverse United LLC. And please check out Gatherverse Summit because those are wonderful platforms. And then check out Victory XR. They're wonderful educational partners if you're an educator for that micro-credentialing. And check us out because we'll be doing the culturally responsive spaces.
Awesome. Thank you to our producers for the great questions. And of course, our panel for chiming in and answering questions during the first hour. And as we are a little bit past time, but join us for the Blackmagic hour in after hours. If you are watching on YouTube, head over to officehours.global so you can access it. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you shortly.
Thank you, everyone. I had a wonderful time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That was really good.
That was really great.
Let's get Dr. Morris to join after hours. She can hang
Seriously, how about Saturdays too?
That's really true. Yes.
Dr. Morris doesn't understand why we're all whispering.
Whispering, right?
That's what we do at the end.
It's a thing. It's just a thing we do after the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the light comes up, and then we all leave. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.